I have a friend, a good friend of mine in Chicago, and he's a critical care doctor. And his daughter, Allah yarhamuha, passed away over a decade ago when she was 13 years old. And her passing was one that was not sudden. She received a diagnosis of a disease, of a condition similar to ALS, right. In which there's a slow degradation of quality of life and usage of muscles and eventually the nervous system, and then there's a passing away, the organs fail. And he's a physician, so he understands everything that's happening. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because this was a decade ago, and I think it was a little bit more than a decade ago. I remember being somebody that, a good friend of his. He's an older brother. He used to give khutbah in the community. Good guy, really good guy, mashallah. And I remember seeing the posts and him sharing the news about his daughter, Bayan. And I remember being like a younger brother to him and seeing, and then eventually seeing her passing, and the mention of janazah and the condolences coming in from the community. I remember witnessing all of this. And then there's the subsequent charity efforts for Sadaqah Jariyah on her behalf. Mm. I watched all of it, right? And subhanAllah, he and I were, and I've asked him if I could share this story, and he's given me permission. He and I were spending time together recently. I was visiting the city that he lives in. And in between my lectures, he and I went to go get dinner. And he was talking to me about this moment. And he said, he's a very good Muslim. And he said that this has been one thing that I still don't understand the purpose of it. Why?
Right.
Like you said, like there's some you're going to get, some you're not going to get. He's really struggling with it. And he says, and I've submitted to Allah that I will not understand this. And some days will be good, some will be bad. Some moments will be good, some will be bad. Mm-hmm. Okay. Allah Ta'ala gave him other children. Alhamdulillah, they are alive and well and healthy. But he said, this is one that really just kind of, it breaks him and it stumps him. And it really is difficult for him, of course, as it would be anybody.
Of course. Yeah.
So that night, subhanAllah, we talked a little bit. And then that night I was teaching from this book, and I brought up one point from the Imam Izz ibn Abdus Salam, his points. And he says that sometimes Allah tests a person so that they can become a mercy for other people. And that's the reason that you're being tested. Mm. You are being tested so that you can be a deliverer of mercy for someone else who's experiencing the same test later. Okay? And I'm sharing that point. I'm talking about it. What did so-and-so say? Ibn al-Qayyim said this. Ibn Rajab said this. So-and-so. I'm sharing it. And I see him in the audience, and he's crying. And I look, and I'm like, oh, subhanAllah. And our conversation is like ringing in my head. Mm. And then after the talk is done, he comes up, he says, let me drive you home. So, or let me drive you back to where you're staying. So he takes me and he starts talking to me. He says, for years I struggled understanding, and I would talk to imams and mashayikh and shuyukh and ulama, and I would never really get a satisfying answer. And I was very difficult. It was difficult for me that my religion didn't give me like a clear answer on why this happened to my daughter. And then he said, but when you just shared that point of the imam in the book about becoming a mercy for other people, he said, something flashed through my mind. And that is that at the hospital that I work at, they will call for me. There's like a special code that they'll call for him on the floor when there is a family who is losing their child.
Right.
In the room when the child is about to pass or has received a very bad diagnosis or bad news. There's a code they'll call for this doctor. And he'll walk in the room, and he says the families are sometimes catatonic, sometimes they're hysterical, sometimes they're in between, sometimes they're shouting, sometimes they're crying. And he says they don't want to talk to any other doctors or nurses. Because why? Because how does a person, like you said, how can you console somebody? Mm-hmm. You've never gone through what they're going through. Yeah. I'm sorry to tell you that your child will die. Let me know what I can do to help. Well, unless you had a child die, you have no clue what this person's experiencing. So he walks in, he says, hello, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and 10 years ago, my daughter died. And he says that the people just crumple into his arms and break down, and they hug him. Mm. And this is where it gets emotional, subhanAllah, is he said that. He told me, he goes, I understand now that Allah put us through this because my daughter was meant to be a mercy for other people. And that was like, that's her goal. That's her mission. That's why Allah Ta'ala created her, is that she's rahmah for others. And so he said, like, finally that line kind of helped him. And again, of course, this doesn't solve anything, but it gave him perspective. It helped connect a dot maybe or two. And that he said that, this story now has some tangible wisdom in it that I can take and say, when I meet with these families, when I talk to them, I am able to connect. And only because Allah put me through this moment, am I able to now be a rahmah for parents that are losing their own children.
Yeah.
And he basically told me that if this is the reason why she passed, what a noble reason. Right? And again, I'm sitting here, again, as I always do, bawling, crying, because I can't even fathom what it would mean to lose my Musa or my Iman, my kids. And you have this person who's courageously able to take this chance and connect the dots and try to figure this out with, Allah's infinite wisdom, understanding completely why, subhanallah. And so maybe if you saw your trials as being a preparation for you, being a means of mercy for others, then maybe for you the trial would be worth it. Maybe. Right? And we ask Allah Ta'ala to give us such a noble opportunity to help others with our trials.
I mean,